Vanakkam, Pesu Pesu viewers. Today we have author Subramanian who has written a book on Adi Shankara named Shankara. Right. So this covers the life journey of Adi Shankara. So I would like to ask you, sir, what was the exact scenario in Bharat when Adi Shankara took sannyas? What was the state of sanatan dharma back then?
Yeah. So the advent of Adi Shankara, if you're asking about that, the advent of Adi Shankara, what was the situation then? So in Bharat, if you see at that point of time, you had the rise of Buddhism was there. Buddhism was already a well-established mata. So the way it came about is you had the Vedic religion, which is called as sanatan dharma. That was the dharma that was there prevalent in most places. But what happened is when the ritualism aspect, the ritualistic aspect of sanatan dharma, it became a bit over the board in few cases where you had sacrifice of animals, people, etc. When those kind of practices started creeping in, it started creating a bit of an issue in certain sections of the society, and that is actually the rise of Bhagavan Buddha. So if you see why Bhagavan Buddha took birth itself was to oppose these aspects of the ritualistic areas of the Vedic religion. So that is why Bhagavan Buddha emphasized a lot on the Panchashila, the various gunas, qualities like Satya, Ahimsa, Asteya, Brahmacharya and all of these things. But what happened is with the coming of Buddha Mata, people started following Buddha. They only took these aspects of Buddha without any ritualistic aspect. So there was no karma and there was only talking about developing good qualities and being a good human being.
Okay.
Now the issue becomes that if you don't do action, if you are not involved in actions, you will not get evolved as a better human being. So that linkage broke with the coming of the following of Buddhism, and it started degrading.
Okay.
So people started forsaking the Vedic religion because this was an easier way out. You could be part of a sangha, you could become a bhikkhu, and you would get all the benefits from the royalty, people would give you everything, and you could lead a luxurious life.
Okay.
So the objective of why Buddha wanted people to follow this mata itself changed. That was the time when it was a decline of Vedic religion. That is what we call as a decline of Vedic religion. When the karmic aspect or the ritualistic aspect completely went away, people were not concerned about following any rituals or any Vedic actions, and they just believed in some of these qualities and gunas, and they just wanted to lead a luxurious life. That was the degradation of the Buddha Mata.
Okay.
That is the time when Adi Shankara's advent comes to revive the Vedic religion.
Was Adi Shankara meant for this?
In the sense,
Many claim him as an avatar of Lord Shiva himself. Was he meant for this?
Okay. Now, see, when you take the concept of avatara, there are various extreme viewpoints on this. But the way I have interpreted it, and that's how I have written in the book also, I like to look at everybody as having aspects of human and divine.
Okay.
Like any of us. Because Adi Shankara walked on this earth. We are saying that he walked on this earth. If he walked on this earth, he was living in flesh and blood. So he was a human being like all of us, but endowed with divine qualities also.
Okay.
So the moment you say avatara, if you go to the highest of Vedantic religion, Vedanta will say each of us is an avatara. Right? So it's only about among us who is more evolved, who is more
divine,
mature, who has gone to that highly spiritual level. So I would say Adi Shankara's advent was definitely of one such personality who was much higher in the spiritual evolution.
Okay.
So he had all those qualities that was needed to do this Vedic revival. That definitely he had.
What was the actual modus operandi through which he revived the Vedic religion? How did he do that?
Yes. So first thing is that he was born into an ecosystem. He was born in Kerala, right? The Kerala at that point of time, even today, the Vedic religion is always preserved. Even today, if you see many of the Vedic yajnas and yagas like Somaratra, Somayaga, Atiratra and all happen in Kerala. The Nambudri community has preserved that in a very good way. At that point of time, it was much higher. So the Vedic religion was in full swing in Kerala. So Vedas were completely followed at that point of time. Adi Shankara took birth in that kind of an ecosystem. So that was already an advantage, that he took birth in an ecosystem that was resounding with Vedas. And he was, of course, a prodigy. To say that, because that's the different terms we use, like avatara, incarnation, because in a span of 7 years, he completed his whole studies of the Vedas, the Puranas, Itihasas, Dharma Shastras, everything was completed within a span of 7 years. By the time he was 7 years of age, he had completed his education.
I think he took sannyas at the age of 8.
Yeah, so I'll come to that. He took the sannyas at the age of 8. What he did is, after he did all this, various Dharma Shastras and everything, he realized that of all the Shastras and the Vidyas and the learning, the only truth or reality is the Upanishads, or the essence of the Vedas, which is Vedanta. So he came to that conclusion out of his own contemplation, out of reading all these Shastras. He firmly believed, and he had that firm conviction that the Upanishads alone are the truth. Now he wanted some guru to initiate him into that process of realizing that truth.
Okay.
See, reading something in the book is one, and experiencing it is another. Upanishads or Vedanta is thing to be experienced. So he had got that knowledge from the Shastra or from the book. Now he wanted to get that knowledge from an experienced master or a guru. That is why he walked so many 100 kilometers from Kerala down south to Narmada in Madhya Pradesh to get this initiation from his guru Govinda Bhagavat Pada, because at that time there were not many realized masters available. Probably he was only master then.
Okay.
Was known.
After his time, there were many masters, right?
Yes, from his Shishya Parampara, then many people came.
Okay. But
So
not
then
before that.
You don't have many, because if you had them, then he would not have had to travel
Okay.
all this way in search of the guru.
Okay.
He had to travel right from Kerala to Madhya Pradesh, and at that age of 8 is when he met his guru and he got the initiation. So he took sannyasa at the age of 8. And then, to your question, to your point, when
How did he do that?
yes, how did he do that? So what he did is, he first grounded himself in the truth, the reality. So he himself first experienced what it is.
Okay.
Staying with the guru, understanding the Upanishads in the right way. He spent 4 years as Gurukula Vasa with the guru. After that, he became ready. He became clear. First thing is of Shankara that strikes you is clarity of thought. He had so much of clarity that this is the way. That comes out of deep understanding of the Vedas and the Upanishads and an experience. He had that. So when the age of 12, he went to Kashi to propagate the Vedanta Marga or the Vedic Marga. He had to counter in Kashi. You can imagine it is like an education hub, right? Of those days, like Kanchipuram is education hub. Similarly, Kashi was all over India. So you had people from all across various faiths, and scholars were all there in Kashi. So you can imagine that you cannot get away. They will ask you the toughest of the questions, and if they are not convinced, then you have to leave. Right? Your philosophy will not get established. So if he established the Siddhanta of Vedanta there, it means how much he would have debated and argued, and how much his arguments would have really convinced the scholars of those days. A 12-year-old child convincing the scholars of those days. So the first thing that Adi Shankara had was the conviction and the deep understanding, clear understanding. And that is also reflected in his commentaries, the clarity with which he says. In fact, if you ask any scholar of Vedanta or Sanskrit, they will say that understanding or reading a commentary of Shankara is the easiest.
Yeah,
Shankara Bhashya is the easiest of the Ved. The Acharyas who have come later, their Bhashyas have become more difficult in language. But Shankara Bhashya is still easier to understand, read and understand.
Did he choose to write in a simpler language so that everybody can understand? Was that?
Could be, but I see it as a simplicity of thought.
Okay.
Because his objective was not to complicate the language.
By nature, his thoughts are so simple.
It's very similar to in Sanskrit, classical Sanskrit literature, you have Kalidasa. Kalidasa is known for his simplicity. Anybody can read Kalidasa's books and they will get. But it is simple, yet it is grand. The language is simple, but the thoughts are grand. Same is the case we find with Shankara. The language is simple, but the content he says is something beyond comprehension. So he adopted that kind of a very simple way of relating things, giving beautiful examples, right examples at the right points of time. So that is one thing that strikes you. At the same time, so this was all his initial years when he was busy with the Vedanta, the Upanishad. But when he traveled India, he realized that not everybody is at that level to understand the highest Advaitic philosophy, that everything is one, everything is Brahman. You and me, we cannot understand that. 99.99% of the people cannot understand that. So his point was, how do I take it to them? So he started composing stotras. So if you look at the literature of Shankara, you have the highest, the bhashyas and the granthas, very advanced prakarana granthas, and then you have the stotras. The stotra literature, the simplest anybody can recite. Most of the times today, if you look at, like for example, for Ganesha, he has the Ganesha Pancharatnam, the Mudakarata Modakam. Anybody, even if they don't understand anything, they will keep chanting that. Krishnashtakam, Achyutam Keshavam Ramanarayanam, and so on. Gangashtakam, he has composed on Ganga. Narmada, he has composed.
My question is, how through these shlokas, he was able to convey the idea of Advaita?
Yes. So that is a beautiful thing. What he does is that in all his stotras, he will speak about the deity. He will speak about everything. Towards the end, he will say that you're worshipping Ayyappa or you're worshipping Panduranga. He will describe everything about Panduranga. At the end, he will say that Panduranga is only Brahman. So you are introduced to the concept of Brahman in that stotra. Okay. Now what is Brahman? There you will find some other place you can know what is Brahman. So in his stotras, it will end with a place where it comes to Brahman. He will not stop with just the deity. He will start with the Devata and he will end with Brahman.
He will link each and everything with Brahman.
With Brahman. And that Advaitic philosophy will come towards the end just as a thought. So even if you don't understand, it has gone into your head that Panduranga is Brahman. Vithala is Brahman. It has gone into your head. Later on, when you start reading more about Brahman, you become more attached to Brahman because for you, Brahman is Panduranga. So then, this is the path from Saguna to Nirguna. That is our path in Sanatana Dharma. You start with worship of the form and then you go to the formless. That is the only way to do. I cannot imagine formless in the beginning. So that is what Acharya did, where he began them with stotras, and slowly and steadily, when you start progressing, then you will get introduced to granthas like Viveka Chudamani. Which is still simple in language, but basics are given there.
Many say that Viveka Chudamani is the highest level of thought given by Adi Shankara.
Yes.
Most toughest to understand. Once you understand Viveka Chudamani, you won't decide in this materialistic body. So,
see, actually Acharyas, all granthas are, the ideas are lofty. The highest of the truths are given there. Even in the stotra, it is that way. Viveka Chudamani, by the name itself, it says it is the crest jewel of discrimination, right? Viveka Chudamani. Reading is not a problem at all. You can easily read. Simple stotras. He says, Manushyatvam, Mumukshutvam, Mahapurusha Samshrayaha. He says these three things are important for a person. Simply, Manushyatvam, you have to be a human. Mumukshutvam, have desire for liberation. Mahapurusha Samshrayaha, you should come in contact with great people.
Person.
The ideas are simple, lofty. The problem comes in when you start practicing it. Okay, how do I get mumukshutvam? Then he goes to all the qualities that you should have, shama, dama, and the way he defines each of them, simple words. For example, I'll give you one example. There is a term called titiksha, commonly translated as forbearance. You have to bear, you tolerate, right? Whatever happens, you have to tolerate. That is one of the qualities.
Okay.
But how does Acharya define titiksha? Sahanam sarva dukkhanam. Okay, all the dukkhas you are tolerating. But what happens most of the time, we tolerate. Why? Because you cannot give back. Your boss is saying something, I am tolerating because I cannot tell back to the boss. Right? But inside there is a revenge. At some point of time, I will give back to him. So second statement comes, apratikara purvakam. There should be no pratikara buddhi. That I will take a revenge on you one day. When my dukkha goes, I will come back to you. No. Some other people, what they do, the dukkha comes, they'll constantly complain, every day complaining, right? Like a complaint box. Chinta vilapa rahitam. No chinta, no vilapa, no constant lamentation. Sa titiksha nigatiti. This is titiksha. So you have to forbear, but you should not complain about it, nor should you have that revenge mind. So that, even to practice that one, titiksha is so difficult. But the way Acharya explains it, so beautiful, so easy. But the point that you said, if you practice that, you will go some other place.
Yeah.
That is so, the point in Acharya's thing is about putting it into practice. It is not about understanding.
we were talking about how he did it.
Yes.
So through stotras, he linked everything with Brahman.
With Brahman. So what happened? He understood the landscape of the people.
Okay.
He understood that not everybody is mature. So he started creating the literature for different kinds of people. So that was one. Second is, wherever he went, he understood that in our Sanatana Dharma, the Kshetra, Devalaya, the temple is a crux of the society. At that time it was definitely, now it has become just for going and worshipping, but at that time even social, cultural, everything, the hub was the temple. So the moment a temple is desecrated, if invaders have come and looted and all, it creates a social impact. So what he did, he reconsecrated vigrahas in many of these temples and brought back the life into that. For example, the prominent examples are Badri.
Okay.
At that time, Badrikashrama, the idol was not there. People had ransacked it, and there was people who were fearing to even go there. Acharya he goes into the dhyana, he finds that the murti is there within the Ganga. He goes there, he takes a dip, brings back the murti, reconsecrates it, and restarts the puja. The moment that started, people started going to Badri because now the Lord has come. Ishvara has come there. What that does, it reinstills the faith of people. Like this he has done for many temples.
Okay.
Many temples. So this is the second thing he did. He understood. See, he is talking Advaita. He is himself consecrating vigrahas and temples. People will ask, what is this? He is talking Advaita. How can he do consecration of temples? It is not at loggerheads. Advaita is the highest philosophy, but every person is not at that level. So for this person who is going to the temple, I need a temple. I need a vigraha. I need the puja vidhana. So he did stotras, he did the temples, he did higher granthas, prakarana granthas, and above all what he did is that beyond his mortal period, how is this going to function? That is where the concept of the mathas came. It was the first time it was introduced by Bhagavan Buddha, the Sangha. Until then, sannyasa was never an institution in Sanatana Dharma. People used to take sannyasa and go, individual. I can become a sannyasi, I will live as a sannyasi.
But Adi Shankara institutionalized...
Bhagavan Buddha did that first.
Okay.
Buddha brought the Sangha.
Okay.
But it was again Sanatana Dharma. So for Sanatana Dharma, there is no institution. So Shankara was the first one who introduced for Sanatana Dharma an institution of the sannyasi, which is the matha. Actually, the matha is what we know. But in the book, I have explained there were multiple, the Naga sadhus were part of that. Of this institutionalization.
Okay.
They were all different institutes. The akhadas that you have in the north are part of this institutionalizing. So in the south, we only know of mathas. But actually, if you go, mathas are just one part of the institutionalizing process. It's called the Dashanami Sampradaya. The Dashanami Sampradaya, 10 names, is not just for the mathas. It's also for the akhadas. And how did he create? He created the Shastradhari and Astradharis. That is how it is classified. Shastradharis are people who are custodians of the knowledge, the Shastra. So they will read the Shastra, they will interpret the Shastra right way, and they will, like the mathas are doing, if you go to them with a doubt, they will clarify the doubt of how it has to be done. They are not inventors of Shastra, they are interpreters.
Yeah.
So you know what the Shastra says. Astradhari, if they also know the Shastra, but if time comes, they will pick up the weapon also. They'll pick up the Astra. This is what happened with the Naga sadhus when people attacked the Varanasi temple. There are evidences of how the Naga sadhus rose in revolt. That means he created, understanding that there is going to be threat to the Sanatana Dharma, he created this Matha constitution, which is about Shastras and how to tell people how to lead life and everything. At the same time, if a problem comes, how to revolt back. So, in a way, I would say such a visionary inner transformation of people through stotras, temples and all of this, and Advaita Granthas, and physical protection through the mathas, which teach the good things in life and what has to be done, and these kind of formations like the Astradhari sannyasis, who will come back to you if you are really becoming a threat.
Let's imagine Adi Shankara was not born. What would have happened to Sanatana Dharma according to your opinion?
See, at that point of time, if such an incarnation or such an advent had not happened, it would have gone to heavier depths of forsaking the Vedic religion. Vedic religion would have declined heavily followers of Vedic religion, right? It would have gone hugely to Buddhism.
So that's why yada yada hi dharmasya glanirvavati bharata.
That applies here perfectly. Even Bhagavan Buddha was yada yada hi dharmasya. At that time also something was problematic, so he came. But when that also degraded, Adi Shankara had to come. And one thing that we have to remember is that even if a great avatara comes, we are more capable enough to degrade it even further.
Okay.
So even after that, things have happened, problems have happened. So you have had, that is why you have had more and more Mahatmas coming. So even in his matas, the sampradaya that he set, every other successor of a matha is considered as Shankaracharya himself. This is the uniqueness of the Shankara parampara.
Okay.
In other paramparas,
Okay.
you say Ramanujacharya or other acharyas, you consider disciples of them. You never call them as Ramanujacharya. They are given different other names. But here, each of them is referred to as Shankaracharya because you are believing that that spirit is continuing. And you want everyone to stay with that same spirit and motivate the society.
The effect of Advaita.
Effect of Advaita. Because anyway, Shankara didn't see difference between him and the disciple. So Advaita is one. And second is that for you there is a assurance that Shankaracharya is still there. It does in a different form maybe, but he is still there. He is living.
Just because you brought up the parampara,
Yeah.
there is a controversy in Tamil Nadu that Kanchi Matha was not established by Adi Shankara. There are many people saying the same. What do you think? Have you got any solid evidence to prove that Kanchi Matha was established by Shankaracharya himself?
Okay. Yeah, as you rightly said, this controversy has been going on for ages, and even today we find that controversy, which is a bit unfortunate. See, firstly, and that I have mentioned in my book, Shankara parampara is, Shankara did not say that only 4 people are my parampara. In fact, in the Shankara Vijayas, they say that he had many disciples even during his time who used to accompany him. So if he had many disciples, each disciple has got a parampara. So we cannot say only 4 is parampara or 5 is parampara. So even putting a number there is very difficult because so many disciples have been there. And even beyond that, as I said, the spirit of Shankara lives. Anybody who believes and practices Shankara's spirit is Shankara parampara. So tradition of Shankara is, the only requirement is that you have to follow Shankara and you have to believe in the Acharya.
Okay.
Now coming to this specific question. See, there is a concept of Amnaya Matha. Okay. Amnaya Matha was primarily established as nodal mathas. Yeah. So you have, generally we call them as Chaturamnaya Matha, 4 Amnaya Mathas. North, South, East, West. Geographically that makes sense. That is what is mentioned in a book, in a text called as Mathanushasanam or Mathamnaya. That is the book that is used by the Mathadipatis to say how the Mathadipati should be, what should the Matha do. This is the book. It is ascribed to Adi Shankaracharya or it is ascribed to some of his contemporaries who wrote what he said. Now the Mathamnaya says 4 mathas. Okay, the Mathamnaya that is accepted. There is Uttara, Purva, Paschima, which is the thing that we know, Joshi Matha, Puri Matha, Dwaraka Matha.
Dakshina.
When it comes to Dakshinamnaya, it says that the Matha is Sringeri, the Devata is Kamakshi,
Okay.
and the Kshetra is Rameshwaram.
How?
That is how it is defined. In every other place, the Devata is the same place.
Okay.
Matha is the same place. Kshetra is also same. It is not, they are all in the same geographical location. Only for Dakshinamnaya, it put a Trikona. It put Sringeri as the place of Matha.
I can relate Sringeri and Kamakshi. How Rameshwaram?
Rameshwaram is the Kshetram. That is how it is defined.
Okay.
So, see here, the way we have to interpret now, we don't know why and how. The way we'll have to interpret this is that when it comes to Dakshina, okay, that means the moment he says these 3 are part of one thing, there is a link or thread between the 3. Even today, if you see if you hear the acharyas of Sringeri or Kanchi, they consider Rameshwaram as their temple,
Okay.
as their kshetra. Rameshwaram, so the Char Dham, when you say, that becomes Rameshwaram, Jagannath Puri, Dwaraka and Badri. So that is the Char Dham concept. That comes in the Matha also. Sringeri Matha, Kanchi, that becomes the Mathas. Now Kamakshi, how?
Yeah, Kamakshi. How?
Kamakshi is not in Sringeri. Kamakshi is in Kanchipuram. But she is the Devata. So what we come to understand is that during his time, he did not view this as a different thing. He viewed this as a single entity.
Okay.
Okay. Over a period of time, there could have happened that, and this has happened in many places where one disciple has gone and set up another matha. One acharya has given initiation to multiple sannyasis, one sannyasi has gone and set up a matha. All this have been possible. In later times, how many other mathas have come, we don't know. So these are all possible that many more mathas were set up in later times. But it remains a fact that in his Shankara Vijayas, Acharya has stayed in Kanchipuram for a very long period of time. The yantra that is there in the Kamakshi temple was established by the Acharya. So there is clear evidence of him having association with Kanchipuram. Even today, there are many sculptures and many temples in Kanchipuram that bear resemblance to Acharya, Shankaracharya. So that means he has stayed in Kanchipuram. Of course, there are few Shankara Vijayas that say that he attained Siddhi in Kanchipuram. Near the Kamakshi and Sannidhi itself, he attained Siddhi. So what one interpretation they say is that he established these 4 mathas and he came to the Siddhi in this place, and that parampara is continuing.
Okay.
So that is one. That is why in some text itself they quote Kanchi Matham as a Moolamnaya Matha.
Okay.
Or Mukhya Amnaya Matha. Different names are given. In some Shankara Vijayas they mention
apart from the Chaturamnaya Matha.
Yes, apart from the Chaturamnaya, they are called Chaturamnaya, Paschima, Uttara, Dakshina and all.
This is Moolamnaya.
Then addition they quote this as Moolamnaya. Actually physically this is the only other Amnaya Matha. Then they quote one Matha in Kashi, one other Amnaya Matha in Kashi, and then they quote other Amnaya Mathas which are more spiritual in nature. Like they say Ananda, that is you should be blissful inside and all of that. So it goes into that. But physically if you consider, apart from the Chaturamnaya, some Shankara Vijayas do mention about Kanchi as an Amnaya Matha, but they don't call it as Dakshinamnaya. They call it as Moolamnaya Matha or Mukhya Amnaya Matha. And they also mention as Kashi, but we don't have any functioning Matha there as such as we know. So this is, so Acharya has lived. Second evidence to this is that we have one of the greatest Brahmajnanis who were there in the last century was Sadashiva Brahmendra, who's probably accepted by most Sampradayas as a Jnani, as a realized soul.
I think he is a Pithadipati of Kanchi Matha.
He was not Pithadipati, but he was initiated by the Pithadipati.
Okay.
His name is Sadashiva Brahmendra
Saraswati. Yeah.
But he didn't adorn the Matha.
Okay.
He was a Avadhuta. Because if you are a Mathadipati, you have certain rules and restrictions, you have to be there. He was not, he was too much beyond that. Okay. So he was initiated.
I remember seeing him in the Kanchi Matha calendar somewhere. Okay.
Could have been in his form, but you know, an Avadhuta cannot retain Mathadipatyam.
Okay.
Because he cannot function. He has gone beyond that. But he was initiated by the mathas of Kanchipuram. So his guru was Paramashivendra Saraswati. He was the one who initiated him. He has written a Jagadguru Ratnamala Stavam. He has composed very few, because out of that state he used to hardly come. But when he came, he wrote this Jagadguru Ratnamala Stavam, in which he has documented all the acharyas until his guru's time. Starting right from Adi Shankara till his guru's time. We have that lineage documented in his Jagadguru Ratnamala Stavam.
Okay.
So we have a documented evidence of a lineage in Kanchi Matha. Kanchi, and he mentions it as Kanchi Kamakoti Matha. He mentions it. So you have multiple evidences to say that Kanchi is a Matha.
Okay.
Kamakoti is a Matha. That definitely would have existed. Acharya has stayed for a long period of time, so definitely that possibility.
Adding on to this, you mentioned they have a lineage.
Yes.
You know each and every Acharya well documented.
Yes.
But the time period of Adi Shankara comes again. There arises a controversy.
Yes.
Because Sringeri Matha gives some other time, and Kanchi Matha they are saying some BC, right? So Sringeri Matha they are giving some 700 AD, right? 700 or 800?
820.
820 AD.
788 to 820.
Yeah. So there is a vast gap in between, like 1,000 years gap.
Yeah. To be precise, 1,300 years is the gap. It is, I think, the Kanchi Matha, they say 507 or 509 BCE.
BCE.
And this is 820 AD.
AD.
Or 788 AD if you consider the birth, whichever birth and the Samadhi time.
How can there be such a vast difference?
Yes. I think that is an ongoing debate. Now the problem in that is, of course, Acharya has not mentioned anywhere his date. So you cannot infer from his works. His contemporaries have not mentioned. His disciples have not mentioned. No place has anybody mentioned this is the year Acharya took birth or this is the year he went into Samadhi. So there is no convincing evidence from Acharya's works or any of his contemporaries or disciples, immediate disciples of his birth or Samadhi. This is the first point to be noted. Second point is that, as I said, this lineage, if you trace back the lineage of the Kanchi Matha, you will definitely come to those many years which goes to that BC era. Because so many people, if they have been there, it is not possible that it could have been just 828.
From now 2500 years.
Yes. So 2500 years will have to be the rough time frame if all those people have, all those acharyas have existed as per the lineage of the Kanchi Matha. Now Kanchi Matha has that. Puri Matha also maintains a very high lineage, and there has been probably many years back, there was a conference held between the Mathas, Madhadipatis of Puri, I think Joshi Math, Dwaraka Math and Kanchi Math, and all of them unanimously agreed that it is BC.
Except Sringeri Math.
So Sringeri Math has got their records that go only up to 788 AD. So it becomes very difficult for them to say what existed before that. So as per their records, they are going with 788 to 820. Now this is one controversy. Now, frankly, I have not addressed this controversy in the book because I am no historian to say that this inscription is right or that inscription is right. And actually, Sringeri Matha is as much an authoritative Matha as Kanchi Matha is. So I am no person to say that this Matha is wrong and that Matha is right. Right? It's beyond my scope of even talking about it. Another controversy that exists is between the Sringeri Matha and the Kudali Matha. Because Kudali Matha says we have the lineage going up to BC. So they say because we have that lineage, we are the original Sringeri Matha because we have that lineage. So all these controversies are going on. But among all this, what I found out is that there is a chronology. Buddha, right? After Buddha comes Kalidasa. After Kalidasa comes Kumarila Bhatta, and after Kumarila Bhatta comes Shankara. Okay. This chronology is more or less accepted by everybody.
Okay.
There are internal evidences. Kumarila Bhatta has quoted something from the works of Kalidasa. So that means he should have either been a contemporary or slightly before or after. For Buddha Matha to come down and for somebody to do Uddhara, it cannot happen in 5 years. For the Matha to take space and to become at its peak and then to start degrading, you generally attribute a minimum of 100 years or something to span between the two things for them to happen. So based on that is where they separate that there is a time span between Bhagavan Buddha and Shankara. Kumarila Bhatta and Shankara's story is known that Kumarila Bhatta was a senior contemporary of Shankara. So with all this, it displays that the chronology generally assumed is that Buddha, Kalidasa, Kumarila Bhatta and Shankara. Now the problem is Kalidasa's date is also not fixed. There are people, scholars have debated and discussed on that, but there are people again who quote right from 5th century AD to BC also. Bhagavan Buddha's also date is not clear. Though there is a commonly accepted date. But if you really start asking evidences for it, people will have evidences both sides. The BC, the 3000 or the 300 BC will also have something, a 500 BC will also have an idea. So the question is that each of this date is itself is moving piece. So how do you fix this date without knowing all these dates? So my limited point in this is that many people have done, and I have given all those references in the book. Many people have done research on this. My point is, beyond a point, it is difficult to establish because you don't have those conclusive evidences which are completely matching. Yes, those evidences are all right. But at the end of the day, it becomes, okay, now what do you want to accept and go? Another important point that I want to mention here is that has happened especially in our culture, is that with the Western scholars starting to write dating of our books, it has created a serious bias and is skew in our literature. For the first starting happened with the dating of the Vedas. Okay. Which was,
what are you going to achieve by dating Vedas?
So the point was, okay, fine, even if they wanted to know when the Vedas were, they came into being. If you go by a traditional view, they are apaurushaya, of non-human origin. How can you date something that is non-human in origin? Okay, you might date when they were written, but Vedas have existed in oral form for several thousand years. How do you know when the first person spoke to the next person? How do you know that? You don't have those audible waves for you to capture and tell this is the time when they spoke. So that concept itself, as per the traditional view, is meaningless to even date the Vedas. But still scholars have attempted to do that, and they started saying that it is 1500 BC, then 1000 BC, first the Rig Veda came, then this Veda came. The traditional view does not accept this at all. They say that all Vedas are simultaneous. Vedas are Vedas. Nothing came one after the other. One after the other means you are composing, no?
Yeah.
Vedas are not composed, they have just come. So Vedas have just been there. So that view itself is a very... So what happened? What could have been the motive? It could have been the motive to say that the Vedas are not as old as you think. That means your civilization is not as old as you think. This could have been the motive for you to keep pushing your dates more to from BC to AD. Many things have moved like that. No, this did not happen in BC. This just happened in 1st century AD or 1st century BC. That means you are very close to the beginning of the Christian religion. That is what they want to prove, that you are not as old as you are claiming yourself to be, or as ancient. So until that point of time, we never bothered to talk about dates. The moment Western research came into the being and they started
everything is
putting dates and contesting, then we were left with no tools, because we are not used to this form of research and history to say which date, because none of our acharyas or rishis mentioned any date. So we don't have any date written in any of the books.
Also, even they mentioned the Krodhi Varsha.
That's all. And for us, it's a cycle.
Yeah.
So even in Acharya's time, like even if you say he was born in Nandana Varsha comes every 60 years. So I can assume this 60, or I can assume the BC 60 also.
Yeah.
So that also it doesn't answer the question. So the dating of the Vedas also, when scholars like Balagangadhar Tilak, they dated the Vedas and they said there is a particular astronomical event. And that has happened, say, 6,000 years back. Kanchi Paramacharya in his Voice of the God asks, what is the proof that has not happened another 6,000 years before? You said in 6,000 years back it has happened. Same thing could have happened 12,000 years before or 18,000 years before, because it's a cycle.
Repeating.
You don't have any evidence for that. So dating of anything in our Sanatana Dharma is meaningless. Actually, our Sanatana Dharma believes dating itself is meaningless. Because what is the point of dating? The point is in content. That is why the rishis did not mention the date. If they wanted, they could have mentioned the date. The reason they did not is they didn't want you to focus on date. They wanted you to focus only on the message.
Yeah.
Same with Shankara. He didn't want you to focus on when he was born. That was not the point of his debate. But today we are debating that and we are fighting inwards. So I think that's what I presented in the book, is that is meaningless for us. We all know that Shankara was there.
Let's focus on his message.
Let us focus on his message. Let us focus on the fact that there's so much to be done. What all he has said, we are not doing even 1,000th of that. If you do all that, you will become a better human being. You will protect Sanatana Dharma. That is what he wanted. And today's situation is such, Sanatana Dharma is in the same space where it was when he came also. Maybe it was better then, it is worse now.
Again, we need a Yadalada Dharma.
We need, and we just don't need one Shankara. Maybe we need multiple Shankaras today. How will those Shankaras come? Right? So that is what Acharya has said. So I believe when we go through his life history, we should say what is it that we can take it from that and what can we do? What can we do about it? How did the point that we discussed, establishing yourself in that Vedic philosophy, clarity of thought, debating, believing in that dharma and living that dharma, that is what we should also do.
Okay.
So I believe the message of Shankara is that we have to stand united first. There is no, whether he was born here or there, don't fight. He was born is clear to you and everybody believes he was born. There is no debate on that. Then why debate whether it was 800 AD or BC, doesn't matter.
Okay.
So another point that I wanted to mention here, because you mentioned this, is that we have to be very skeptical of these dates when they come and we start talking on these dates.
Okay.
Because the tendency of the West is to move everything to AD. So the moment something is mentioned as AD, especially of our rishis, I automatically become skeptical. So even here, the AD is not because of any matha saying yes or no. They will have their records. But just because it is AD and they say he was born only then, that itself brings skepticism in me to say that, okay, this could have been a mischief of just trying to push things. So that is what we should be aware of. That is the only point.
So with that message, let us be united.
Yes.
Thank you so much for this, for your time on our channel. I think our audience will enjoy this conversation. Thank you.
I hope. Thank you. Namaskar.
உலக தமிழ் சொந்தங்களுக்கு வணக்கம். நான் ராஜவேல் நாகராஜன். பேசு தமிழா பேசு வலையொலியுடைய வளர்ச்சிக்கு நீங்களும் உறுதுணையாக இருக்கணும்னு நினச்சிங்கன்னா இந்த வீடியோடைய டிஸ்கிரிப்ஷனில் இருக்கக்கூடிய ரேசர் பே லிங்கை கிளிக் பண்ணுங்கள். அந்த லிங்க்கில் போயிட்டு உங்களுக்கு விருப்பமான தொகையை பேசு தமிழா பேசுவனுடைய வளர்ச்சிக்கு உங்களுடைய பங்களிப்பாக நீங்கள் கொடுக்கலாம். நன்றி, வணக்கம்.